There is a moment, quiet at first, almost imperceptible, when reality blinks. You feel it before you understand it. A trembling at the edges of ordinary life, as though the world is trying to whisper a forbidden truth directly into your bones. That's the hook of this journey. The moment you first sense that something vast, ancient, and deliberate has turned its attention toward you. And before we go any farther, stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to hear will thread itself through the hidden chambers of your mind in ways you may not fully grasp at first. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, because what we explore here is not for the faint-hearted, and no one arrives here by accident. This is the story of an awakening that is not gentle or glorified, not wrapped in the soft language of love and light, and certainly not the sanitized transformation popular culture likes to advertise. This awakening is sharp. It cuts through illusion like a razor pulled across the veil of your former life. It demands your honesty, your courage, and most of all, your willingness to be remade. It is the spiritual awakening you must fear, not because it seeks to harm you, but because it refuses to let you remain who you once were. Only a few are chosen for this path, not because they are better or purer or more righteous, but because something inside them refuses to sleep. Something inside them hungers for truth, even when truth feels like fire. You may have felt traces of it already, the dissonance that hums under your daily routines, the sense that you are standing in two worlds at once, the creeping awareness that something in your life no longer fits no matter how much you try to force yourself back into old patterns. Most people call this discomfort anxiety, stress, or burnout. They try to drown it with distractions, numb it with busyness, or bury it under the noise of modern life. But for the chosen ones, this discomfort does not fade. It grows louder, like a cosmic knocking at the door of your being, insisting you answer, even if you fear what stands on the other side. This awakening begins with unraveling, not the poetic, beautifully choreographed unraveling you might read in spiritual books, but the kind that feels like everything familiar is slipping through your fingers. Relationships shift unexpectedly. Priorities collapse. You stop resonating with the environments you once found comforting. It feels as though an invisible hand is rearranging the architecture of your entire existence, pulling you into alignment with something you cannot yet see but can unmistakably feel. And this is why it is feared. Because transformation rarely begins with clarity, but rather with disruption. And yet, beneath the disruption lies a magnetic pull toward something higher, something that hovers just beyond the horizon of comprehension. It is the subversive call of your own soul, awakening you from the trance of inherited beliefs and societal scripts. The chosen ones are simply those who cannot ignore that call, even when answering it threatens to undo everything they thought they knew about themselves. If you are one of them, you might notice how your senses sharpen in ways you cannot articulate. You begin to perceive patterns behind coincidences. Emotional truths rise to the surface like old artifacts resurfacing from the depths of the ocean. People around you may feel distant, as though they are walking in a dream you've started to wake up from. You may feel both deeply connected to everything and painfully separated from the world you once lived in. This paradox is the first sign that your consciousness is expanding beyond its old container. What you fear is not the awakening itself, but the death of the self that came before it. And this fear is sacred. It is the threshold every seeker must encounter, the shadowed corridor between who you were and who you are becoming. Unlike the love and light awakening romanticized online, the chosen awakening is raw. It drags suppressed memories and buried emotions to the surface, forcing you to confront the parts of your inner world you hoped would stay hidden. It exposes your illusions, dismantles your ego's defenses, and requires the kind of inner honesty that feels like standing naked in front of the universe. But through this vulnerability arises a peculiar strength. You begin to see that the awakening you feared is not an enemy but a mirror. It reflects what you have outgrown, what was never truly yours, and what your soul has been trying to liberate you from since the day you were born. The fear you feel is simply the final clinging of your old identity, the last gasp of a self too small to contain the truth of what you are becoming. As this awakening deepens, life begins to reveal itself not as a random scattering of events, but as a meticulously woven tapestry of purpose. You start to understand that every challenge, every loss, every unexpected twist was preparing you for the moment you could finally see behind the curtain. The chosen ones are not chosen by fate or prophecy. They are chosen by their willingness to perceive the world not as it appears, but as it truly is. This path is not easy, but it is profoundly transformative. And those who walk it discover a strength that was always hidden within them, waiting to be uncovered. This is only the beginning of our journey together. What follows will take us deeper into the architecture of awakening, into the symbolic and existential truths that shape the chosen one's path. Stay present, stay open, and most of all, stay honest with yourself as we continue. The true core of this awakening lies in the invisible tension between two worlds. The world you were conditioned to see and the world that has always existed behind it. The former is bright, structured, predictable, shaped by expectations and cultural agreements. The latter is fluid, alive, immeasurable, pulsing with a deeper intelligence that rarely reveals itself all at once. When the chosen awakening begins, you stand at the crossroads of these two worlds, and everything you thought you understood begins to dissolve. This dissolution is not a collapse, but a clearing, like fog evaporating under the rising sun, exposing the landscape you were never meant to forget. At the heart of this awakening is the recognition that the life you once lived was a kind of dream, functional, familiar, and yet profoundly limiting. You were taught to navigate the surface of existence, to move through routines as though that was all there was. But the chosen ones feel the undercurrent, the subtle pull from a deeper layer of reality asking them to look again. It is not that they are given a secret map. Rather, they begin to sense the hidden architecture beneath every experience. Every emotion becomes a doorway. Every synchronicity becomes a signpost. Every challenge becomes a coded message. The universe, once silent, begins to speak. One of the core themes of this awakening is the confrontation with illusion. Illusion is not merely deception, it is the set of assumptions we inherit without questioning. It is the belief that identity is fixed, that reality is static, that the self is bound by the limitations of the physical world. When these illusions begin to crack, fear rushes in to protect the old structure. This is why only the chosen ones go deeper. This is why the path is feared. To accept the collapse of illusion is to accept the collapse of the self you once believed yourself to be. It requires a willingness to walk into psychological and spiritual darkness without a guarantee of what you will find on the other side. Yet, the collapse is only one half of the equation. The other half is revelation. Beneath the illusions lies an expanded self, a consciousness that cannot be confined by the definitions society offered you. One of the guiding pillars of the chosen awakening is the realization that identity is not a fixed sculpture but a living flame. It shifts, stretches, transforms. You begin to understand that who you were yesterday is not who you must be tomorrow, and who you must become has been calling to you across lifetimes. This fluidity is frightening to those who crave certainty, but liberating to those who sense they were born for something more. Another theme is the awakening of perception. Your senses begin to widen beyond the physical. You notice the emotional texture behind words, the unspoken truth behind people's actions, the energetic imprint left behind in rooms and conversations. These perceptions were always available to you, but buried beneath noise. When the noise falls away, the world becomes almost unbearably vivid. Every detail shimmers with significance. Every moment feels threaded with destiny. You begin to perceive connections others overlook, and this heightened awareness becomes both a gift and a burden. A gift because it guides you. A burden because it isolates you from those who are not yet awake. The chosen awakening also introduces a new relationship with truth. Truth is no longer an external authority, but an internal compass. It rises from your intuition, your body, your dreams, your silence. You begin to trust the subtle nudges, the inexplicable certainties, the sensations that guide you toward or away from people, situations, and decisions. This inner truth does not always align with logic or social expectation, and that is where conflict arises. The chosen ones must learn to navigate a world where truth is often inconvenient, uncomfortable, or rejected by those who fear its implications. Perhaps the most unsettling theme is the awakening to your own power. Real power is not force or dominance. It is the ability to shape reality from the inside. It is the recognition that your thoughts, emotions, intentions, and state of being send ripples into the world. This power is not always welcomed. It requires responsibility, self-awareness, and mastery. Many fear it because it eliminates the comfort of blame and excuses. The chosen ones feel this power rising within them like a sleeping giant stretching awake. It frightens them not because it is dangerous, but because it demands that they step into a version of themselves they once believed was impossible. Another fundamental concept is the tension between awakening and isolation. As your perception expands, you may find yourself drifting away from people who no longer resonate with your frequency. Their conversations feel hollow. Their concerns feel distant. Their presence feels heavy. This isolation is not punishment, it is preparation. The chosen awakening often requires a period of solitude so your consciousness can recalibrate without interference. In the quiet, you begin to hear the voice of your soul more clearly. You begin to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. At its core, this awakening is not about becoming superior or enlightened. It is about becoming real, becoming aligned, becoming willing to face every layer of yourself with unflinching honesty. It is about stepping out of the world of shadows and into the world of essence. It is about reclaiming the parts of you that were buried, silenced, or forgotten. And it is about recognizing that the path you fear is the path that leads you home. These themes weave together like threads in a cosmic tapestry, forming the foundation for the deeper symbolic narratives we will explore next. For now, let these ideas settle into your mind like seeds planted in fertile soil, knowing they will bloom in their own time. Every profound awakening comes wrapped in symbols, as though the universe encodes truth in images the soul can understand long before the mind catches up. The chosen ones are those who can read these symbols, not because they were taught, but because something within them remembers the ancient language woven into the fabric of existence. In this section, we enter the realm where narrative and symbolism merge, where stories become mirrors, and where the subconscious begins to reveal its sacred architecture. This is the place where awakening stops being a concept and becomes an initiation. One story, whispered through countless cultures and timelines, speaks of a traveler who wakes up in the middle of a forest with no memory of how they arrived. The air is thick, the trees towering, the light dimmed. As the traveler wanders, they begin to realize the forest is not natural. It rearranges itself, creating paths only when the traveler commits to walking them. This forest is the symbol of the inner world during awakening. The chosen ones find themselves in a place where old maps no longer work. Every step forward is a declaration of trust, and the landscape of the psyche reveals itself only when you dare to enter the unknown. Many turn back. The chosen press on. They walk paths that disappear behind them, ensuring they cannot return to the self they were before. The forest teaches them that awakening is not about gaining clarity first. It is about courage first. Another tale speaks of a mirror that does not reflect the physical form, but reveals the truth of one's state of being. When the chosen one gazes into it, they see not their face, but their fears, memories, desires, wounds, and dormant strengths swirling like a constellation of colors and shadows. The mirror shows everything they have refused to acknowledge. It is overwhelming, sometimes terrifying, yet absolutely necessary. This mirror symbolizes the inner confrontation every awakened soul must endure, the moment when illusion can no longer hide them from themselves. You cannot walk into higher truth carrying the baggage of unexamined wounds. The mirror forces you to face what you have buried. Only those willing to see the full truth of their inner landscape become capable of embodying the wisdom that awaits on the other side. A third symbolic narrative tells of a phoenix that refuses to burn. Unlike the legendary bird that willingly surrenders to the flames, this phoenix clings to its old feathers, terrified of the fire meant to rebirth it. The fire grows hotter, not to kill, but to liberate. The phoenix flaps desperately, trying to escape its own metamorphosis until it finally understands that the only way forward is through surrender. When it allows the flames to consume the outdated version of itself, its wings grow stronger than ever before. The chosen awakening carries this same paradox. Transformation is inevitable, but suffering occurs when the old self resists the necessary burning. Fear is the friction between who you are and who you are becoming. The chosen ones learn that surrender is not weakness, but alignment with the truth that change is not the enemy, it is the portal. There is also the story of the blind monk who seeks enlightenment by sitting at the edge of a cliff. He meditates there for years, believing he must overcome fear of the drop before achieving higher wisdom. One day, a terrible storm forms. The earth trembles, and the monk slips off the cliff. But instead of falling to his death, he discovers he can walk on the air itself. What he feared was never real. The cliff was the illusion. The air was the truth. This narrative represents the moment when the chosen ones realize that many of their deepest fears were projections of the ego, shadows cast by an identity afraid of losing control. When the awakening reaches its peak, the ground falls away, but not because you are meant to crash. It is because you are meant to discover that your essence can stand on terrain the physical world cannot see. Another symbolic thread weaves itself through dreams many awakened individuals report. A locked door that appears in a familiar place. Sometimes it is in a childhood home, sometimes a school hallway, sometimes a fictional space that feels eerily intimate. The dreamer always senses that behind the door lies a truth they are both desperate and terrified to uncover. When the door finally opens, sometimes after years of recurring dreams, the room is not filled with monsters or revelations, but with light. Pure, overwhelming light. This is the symbol of the soul's highest truth, a truth so radiant that the mind fears it before it embraces it. The chosen awakening is the gradual opening of that inner door, the realization that what lies behind it is not dangerous, but divine. These narratives, though symbolic, reveal the anatomy of the awakening you must fear. They show the emotional and spiritual terrain that cannot be described logically because it is not meant to be understood with logic alone. The forest teaches trust. The mirror teaches honesty. The phoenix teaches surrender. The monk teaches the illusion of fear. The locked door teaches remembrance. Together they form an initiation sequence, a journey that strips you bare so you can rebuild yourself with clarity, courage, and consciousness. Symbolic narratives also highlight another truth. Awakening is not a straight path but a spiral. You revisit lessons you thought you mastered. You confront fears you believed you conquered. You uncover memories you didn't realize shaped you. But each time you spiral back, you do so at a higher level of awareness, able to see what you could not see before. This upward spiral is the hallmark of the chosen ones. They do not run from the spiral, they ascend it. In this realm of symbols, you begin to grasp that awakening is not an event, but an unfolding. It is not a single breakthrough, but a series of revelations, each one dissolving another layer of illusion. And those who fear it do so because they sense that once the unraveling begins, there is no turning back. Once the forest moves, once the mirror reflects, once the fire ignites, once the cliff disappears, once the door opens, the journey must be completed. Now that we have stepped into the symbolic world that shapes the chosen path, we are ready to translate these deeper truths into tangible everyday experience. The moment symbolic truth begins to seep into the edges of your daily life, awakening shifts from being an inner experience to something that reshapes your outer world. What once felt mystical or abstract suddenly begins to influence the way you speak, choose, react, connect, and navigate every corner of your existence. This is where the chosen awakening becomes both powerful and unsettling. It does not stay in the realm of introspection. It walks with you. It breathes through you. It demands integration. At first, this integration feels like disorientation. You notice that old habits no longer feel aligned, yet you cannot immediately replace them. You feel a growing sensitivity to environments. Certain rooms, certain people, certain conversations drain you in ways they never used to. This is not fragility but attunement. Your inner world is recalibrating, tuning itself to frequencies that match your emerging truth. What once felt tolerable becomes suffocating, and what once felt distant becomes magnetic. Everyday decisions, what you eat, where you spend time, how you use your energy, begin to feel like spiritual choices rather than mundane routines. This sensitivity is the compass by which the chosen ones navigate the new terrain of their lives. Relationships undergo the most immediate transformation, not because people change, but because you begin seeing through the masks, your own and theirs. You start to notice where you have been shrinking yourself to make others comfortable, where you have been carrying emotional weight that was never yours, where you have been staying silent to preserve harmony that was only ever superficial. This clarity often brings discomfort. Some relationships fall away naturally, like leaves dropping from a tree in autumn. Others require conscious release, an act of courage to honor both your path and theirs. But amidst the losses, you begin attracting people who resonate with your new frequency, individuals who speak in truths instead of performances, who see you instead of the version of you they once expected. The awakening teaches you that relationships are not meant to be held by force, but aligned by authenticity. You also begin to experience a shift in how you perceive challenges. Instead of viewing obstacles as punishments or random hardships, you start recognizing the intelligence behind them. Every conflict becomes a mirror. Every setback becomes initiation. Every moment of discomfort becomes a signal pointing toward unresolved wounds, outdated beliefs, or suppressed desires. This does not mean suffering disappears, it means suffering reveals. The chosen awakening transforms your relationship with pain, allowing you to see it not as a threat but as a messenger. You learn to sit with it instead of running from it, to listen to it instead of numbing it, to understand it instead of fearing it. In doing so, you reclaim power over aspects of your life that once felt chaotic. Your intuition grows sharper, becoming a quiet voice inside you that speaks with increasing clarity. Sometimes it shows up as a sudden knowing, other times as déjà vu or a sensation in the chest or a dream that lingers with eerie relevance. The more you honor it, the stronger it becomes. You begin making decisions not from logic alone, but from alignment. You notice that when you follow intuition, things fall into place with uncanny precision, and when you ignore it, life becomes heavy and tangled. This deepening intuition is one of the most profound real-world implications of the awakening. You start recognizing that you are co-creating your path with forces you once believed were outside you. The chosen awakening also brings a shift in creativity and purpose. Ideas flow more freely, as if coming from a wider reservoir than your conscious mind. Inspiration strikes at odd times, often feeling like it is being whispered rather than invented. Some feel drawn to new forms of expression: writing, music, healing arts, entrepreneurship, or service. Others feel an urge to dismantle what they built in their old life in order to create something aligned with their true calling. This pull toward purpose can feel overwhelming because it often asks you to step into roles you once doubted you were worthy of. But the awakening teaches that purpose is not about perfection, it is about resonance. It is about offering the world the frequency only you can generate. Practical integration also means confronting the ways society tries to pull you back into sleep. You start noticing how fragmented modern life is, how noise, speed, and distraction keep people disconnected from themselves. You observe how much of the world operates on reaction rather than reflection, on fear rather than awareness. This realization can make you feel like an outsider, as though you are moving at a different pace than everyone around you. But instead of withdrawing entirely, the chosen ones learn to walk between worlds, grounded in the physical, attuned to the spiritual, and anchored in a clarity that does not require external validation. There is also a growing sense of responsibility that comes with awakening. Not responsibility in the burdensome sense, but in the recognition that your energy influences the world around you. You begin to see how your emotions ripple into conversations, how your choices shift the energy of a room, how your healing becomes permission for others to heal. The chosen awakening dismantles the illusion of separateness, showing you that every inner shift creates outer echoes. This realization inspires you to be more intentional. How you speak, how you listen, how you show up, how you love, how you protect your peace. Perhaps the most practical implication of all is the emergence of inner stability. Not the stability that comes from predictable circumstances, but the stability rooted in your own awareness. Life still brings uncertainty, chaos, and unexpected challenges, but you respond from a deeper place. You are no longer tossed violently by every emotional wave because you've learned to find the stillness beneath the surface. You become the anchor instead of the storm. This integration is not a one-time event but an unfolding. The chosen awakening continues to shape you, layer by layer, day by day, gently embedding its truths into everything you do. And eventually the world outside begins to reflect the world within. In the end, every awakening leads to a threshold. A moment when you realize that everything you have experienced, questioned, lost, confronted, and reclaimed has been guiding you toward a singular truth. That truth is not found in mystical symbols alone, nor in philosophical concepts, nor even in the raw emotional upheavals that shook you awake. It is found in the quiet recognition that you were never merely a passenger in your own life. You were always the architect, the witness, the seeker, and the source. The awakening you feared reveals this with a clarity that cannot be unseen. And once you see it, your life becomes something different, something intentional, something sacred, something undeniably yours. As you arrive at this threshold, you may look back at the self you once were. The one who clung to comfort, who lived within the walls of inherited beliefs, who followed scripts written by hands that were not your own. There is compassion for that version of you, not judgment. That self was necessary. It carried you through the chapters where survival mattered more than understanding. But now, standing here with a widened perception and a deeper knowing, you can see how small that version of you truly was compared to the vastness of your emerging consciousness. And the beauty of awakening is that you hold space for both, the self that was and the self that is becoming. Everything you feared was, in truth, the invitation. The fear itself was evidence that something powerful was approaching. The chosen ones do not fear awakening because they are weak. They fear it because their souls recognize its significance. Awakening is a death and a birth, a dissolution and a reformation. It is the undoing of everything false and the unveiling of everything real. And that process, sacred as it is, demands depth, honesty, and surrender. Those who walk this path do so not because they were chosen by an outside force, but because their spirit chooses truth over comfort every single time. The illusions you shattered were not mistakes, they were cocoons. They held you long enough for you to develop the strength to break free from them. Now, as clarity floods your inner world, you see the landscape differently. What once looked solid now appears fluid. What once felt random now reveals patterns. What once seemed external now reflects your internal state. And this shift is not temporary. It marks the beginning of living with your eyes open, no longer sleepwalking through experiences, but participating fully, consciously, courageously. The symbolic narratives you encountered, the forest, the mirror, the phoenix, the monk, the locked door, were not merely stories, but initiations. They imprinted themselves into your psyche, showing you paths your soul already knew but your mind had forgotten. You carry them now, not as metaphors, but as living wisdom. They accompany you into future decisions, relationships, transitions, and inner explorations. They remind you that the unknown is not a threat but a field of possibility, that surrender is not collapse but empowerment, that your inner truth shines brighter than any external opinion ever could. As your awakening integrates into the physical plane, you begin to realize something profound. You are not here to escape the world, you are here to illuminate it. You are not here to transcend your humanity, you are here to transform your experience of it. The chosen ones do not float above life, they expand within it, bringing their heightened awareness into conversations, into creations, into communities, into every ordinary moment that becomes extraordinary under the light of consciousness. You become a bridge between the seen and the unseen, the material and the mystical, the personal and the cosmic. And now, standing at the end of this exploration, the question that remains is simple. What will you do with this awakening? Will you treat it as a moment of inspiration and then return to old patterns? Or will you honor it as the turning point it truly is? The chosen path asks for embodiment. It asks that you let your transformation influence how you speak truth, how you set boundaries, how you pursue purpose, how you hold yourself through uncertainty, how you connect with those who resonate with your frequency, and how you release those who do not. Awakening is not something that happens to you. It is something that happens through you again and again, as long as you remain courageous enough to let it unfold. And you are ready. The fact that you have walked through each layer of this exploration proves it. The fact that something inside you resonated with these words means you are already in motion. The universe does not waste its messages on closed ears. You heard this because you were meant to hear it. This is your moment to step fully into the identity that has been waiting behind your old one, to honor the call that has echoed through your intuition for longer than you can remember. The awakening you once feared is now your compass. The unknown you once resisted is now your doorway. The truth you once avoided is now your foundation. And the self you are becoming is not a future self. It is the self emerging right now, in this breath, in this awareness, in this decision to continue walking forward. So take a deep breath. Look at your life with new eyes. Trust the path that is unfolding beneath your feet. You are not lost. You are not behind. You are exactly where the awakening needs you to be. And every step from here is a step into the power, clarity, and purpose you were always destined to embody. Your transformation is not coming. It has already begun.